Hello and welcome to Off the Record. I'm your host, Chris Hershka. Joining me today is Dr. Peyronel of the Department of Communications and Media Studies. He is also the chair of the department. Dr. Peyronel, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Chris.
Thank you. Now to start the interview off, could we have you tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, sort of?
Sure. I actually, as some people can still tell from tones in my voice, in the Pittsburgh area, but actually I grew up about 35 miles outside of Pittsburgh in Armstrong County, which is a relatively rural county, not unlike parts of Erie County or Crawford. So when people hear me, they always think you're from Pittsburgh, and I'm like, well, I'm from the Pittsburgh area, but pretty far out. But actually, I came to Edinboro as an undergraduate. I had never been here, and I came to school here, majored in communication, and then I left and worked for about 10 years and was never back. And the first time I came back was when they offered me, or when they interviewed me for the faculty position here. And now, more or less, I've been around ever since.
Now, you have been in the field of journalism and public relations for some time. Was that always the case? Were you always interested in communication, or was there at a point in your life where you were interested in another pathway, another career?
Well, I have to say that from the beginning, I always had a general interest in communication. I always thought I would work in some aspect of communication. When I came here, I was very interested as a student in music, and so my natural tie was to radio. I guess my initial professional goal when I came to Edinboro was to be what then would have been referred to as an album rock DJ, kind of a radio personality. And then as I got closer to my senior year, people were saying, oh, well, you should do news, and television is where it's at. And so my interest kind of moved from radio into TV news, and I did an internship in television news. And the summer after I graduated, I looked around for jobs and didn't really find anything great. And so I had applied to American University in Washington, D.C., which has a very good graduate journalism program. And since I didn't find any real suitable employment over the summer, I took the assistantship that I had been offered at AU, and I went there for their one-year master's program. And ironically, back then, my teaching assistant was to the professor who taught most of their television courses. So as a master's degree student, my teaching assistant, I was in a studio like this in the control room. Typically, I would direct most of the student projects in class so that the faculty member, he could just kind of sit back and take it in and grade everything. But that was really my last real, other than some freelance work, full-time involvement in television. And then when I finished grad school, my first job was actually as a newspaper reporter. And I did that for a year or two, and then I moved into public relations, first as a public relations writer at Penn State, and then as the director of communications at Westminster College, which is what I was doing when I was hired for the position here. Okay.
Now, you mentioned music, so I want to back up a little bit. What sort of music are you interested in?
Oh, I mean, I've always been a fan of rock music. I guess I'm mostly interested in what you guys would refer to as classic rock, but I still enjoy more contemporary, some alt-type rock too. But I like rock music a lot, and so I'm still fairly interested in it. I mean, I lived it and breathed it when I was a college student, and I think that was the biggest reason I was so interested in radio and working in radio, because I had never been, as much as I like music, I mean, I didn't play guitar or drums or anything.
Because I was going to say, were you in a rock band?
I was never really an actual musician, but I was interested in it, and I think that was my original attraction to radio, was because obviously radio's a music-intensive
You wanted
medium.
to be part of the scene rather than being on the stage, just kind of be a part associated with it. Okay, very interesting. Now, you have been here at Edinboro since 1992, but you have been at other universities, as you mentioned, Penn State and Westminster. What was it about Edinboro that drew you back, that you said, I really want to spend the rest of my life, or a good portion of my life here at Edinboro?
Well, that's an interesting question, because to be honest with you, I had mixed feelings on it, because after all, I had been here as a student. So I did know something about the place and the area and that sort of thing. And working at Westminster is really not that far away. You're a little more than an hour away. So I was in the region, but at Westminster, I was primarily an administrator. I was their director of communications, which meant really my office did most of their public relations work. But I was really interested in teaching. And so I did teach part-time at Westminster. I taught a journalism class, and then I also taught as an adjunct instructor at Thiel College, which is kind of in between Westminster and here, you know, a little to the north of Westminster and south of here. So I wasn't unhappy in my job, but I really thought I would like to get into full-time college teaching. So it wasn't so much it wasn't a matter at all of me looking to come back to Edinboro. It was just that I really wanted to try to move into a full-time college teaching position, and it just so happened that one of the first openings I applied to was here at Edinboro. And I had to be honest with you, and I know everyone jokes about the weather here, but it was an honest consideration. I mean, I can remember at the time asking myself, do I really want to go through all of those winters for all these years of my life?
It is miserable.
And you know, now when I get bummed out about the weather, I think, you know, maybe I shouldn't have dismissed it. But so really, Edinboro, the institution was kind of a neutral factor. It was really that I just wanted to get into a full-time teaching position, and one opened up at Edinboro, and obviously I was familiar with that, and I applied, and I got it, and as I said, I've then been around ever since.
So things just kind of fell into place, and this is where you ended up. Everything kind of lined up, and it was a good fit.
I guess for better or worse and both, right?
Yeah.
It was just
weather aside.
That's right. It was kind of how it wasn't part of a master plan. It was just how things happened.
All right, very nice. Now you did mention that you used to work for a newspaper called Leader Times out of Katanning. Now us as college students, we hear about the lifestyle and the work environment of being a reporter, working in the newsroom from our professors. They tell us, and we see depictions on television, but we really don't know what that experience is like day in, day out, being a reporter. Could you tell us a little bit about your experiences that you had in the newsroom?
Well, my experiences as a reporter were certainly interesting, and you have to keep in mind the size of the papers and the type of the media organizations. The Leader Times is a small daily. I mean, in a relatively small town. But so it is a daily newspaper, you get that experience, but because it is a very small market, you're asked to do a whole lot of things. So in a way, it's a good thing as not being out of school that long, because you get the opportunity to do a lot of different things. I mean, I had to do some 35mm photography as part of it. I started out covering sports, then I did general assignment news, then I actually got promoted to covering county government on a beat system, which was good because even though I was at a small paper, I was competing with reporters from the Valley News Dispatch, which was a much larger Gannett paper in the area, and the now defunct Pittsburgh Press. Back then, the Pittsburgh Press was Pittsburgh's afternoon paper. The Post-Gazette was the morning.
Right.
Well, the Post-Gazette is the one that survived, but back then the Press was actually had a beat reporter that covered Armstrong County. So even though it was a small paper, covering county government in a beat environment, competing with reporters at larger papers, was a very good experience. And then, I was never going to be a photographer, but you just had to do some of that.
Right.
And when I first started, one of the more bizarre aspects of it was that I actually, one day a week, had to work in the dark room. And of course, this is the pre-digital age when you were shooting film and having to process the film. And so the lifestyles editor was off on Saturdays. So every Saturday, whatever film they'd processed, I needed to go into the dark room and do that.
Yeah,
so it was one of those kind of you get to do a million different things type of experiences.
So you get a wide range of duties and whatnot. So that's awesome. Working in a darkroom, because those are pretty much history now.
Oh, and I hated it. I wasn't any good at it, but
still that experience is really cool.
When you're new at a job, it's just something that you have to do, and it was a different experience.
Now we mentioned earlier that you are the chair of the Department of Communication and Media Studies. Could you tell us a little bit about your responsibilities and duties as the chair?
Well, that's interesting too, because as department chair, you're more the representative of the department. I mean, I guess there are what you would consider some leadership responsibilities, in that you convene the department meetings, you meet with the dean and other chairs. At one level, student complaints and student issues come to you as department chair. So it's really a different sort of responsibility, and in large part, I mean, career-wise, you earn, I guess, a small amount, a relatively small amount of money, but in exchange for being chair, instead of teaching the 4 courses, you just teach 2, and then you handle the administrative responsibilities.
Okay. Now, you do teach here, so what are some of your favorite classes to teach that you really enjoy lecturing on?
Well, I tell you what, people joke. I've always really liked teaching, and that was how I got into this profession. People now joke sometimes that I'm even happier and more fun in class just because I'm so happy to be in class doing what I like and not being in some office handling problems, which isn't that fun in particular. So I do enjoy teaching a lot, and before I became chair, I taught really almost all of the department's courses in public relations.
Okay.
Now those responsibilities are a little bit more shared because I only teach half-time, and so Dr. Terry Warburton teaches most of the intro to PR classes, but I still teach public relations management. I teach writing for public relations on a regular basis. I also teach criticism of mass media, which I enjoy. I kind of enjoy that because I kind of come at it from a middle-of-the-road, a very pragmatic perspective, but a middle-of-the-road perspective. Because I worked as a journalist, I know what it's like to work in the media, but also working in public relations, you also find out what it's like to be working on the other side of the desk. And so I actually enjoy teaching that class a lot, too.
So it's like the best of both worlds because you have both fields to pull from. And students get the best.
I hope so. That's the philosophy, and I hope it works out.
That's the game plan.
I hope it works out for students that way.
All right. Now we do have some fun questions. This is our fun part of the interview.
Okay.
So now I have heard in other conversations.
I'll brace myself.
Okay, brace yourself. You ready? In other conversations I was having with people the other day, they were saying that these studio lights were very special studio lights, and that one time you were sitting at this very chair and someone mistook you for George Clooney. Or maybe it was Russell Crowe, I'm not sure. Is that true?
That is a very true story. We worked so hard to get these new studio lights installed, and we were so proud of having them that I came over. I think I came over because I had to do a classroom observation of Professor Wertz. And so he was teaching his TV production class, and so at some point I just kind of sat here, and the class was kind of sitting around me, and I couldn't resist that line. I kind of looked up and I said, "Hey guys, I hear these lights are so good that when I sit under them, I look just like George Clooney." And they kind of cackled and looked around, but it was really hilarious because one of the kids was really on his toes, and he mentioned another faculty member whose name I'll leave out of the story.
Off the record.
And he said, "I'll tell you what, if these lights could make him look good, they're good lights."
Yeah.
So I kind of appreciated that. But that is one of my funnier stories from being in the studio.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, we were kind of talking about rock music, and this next question really ties in well with that. If you could spend the entire day with one rock star, or maybe a rock band, who would it be?
That's a good question. If you go back, I mean, currently, I'm a fan of a lot of people. I probably over the years have been most a fan of Tom Petty and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So I guess if you had me to pick any contemporary artist, it would probably be him.
All right, that sounds great. And thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Peyronel.
Sure thing.